everyone and welcome back to another video. Welcome to one of the 2022 videos. I know we're a little bit delayed and I do apologise, but I do this video every year and I can't not do it. So we are doing every single book that I read in 2022. I am going to try and be quick fire on this because there is a lot of books this year. Well, not a lot. I know some people read like 100 books a year, but for me, there's a lot. There's 22 books to get through. My reading goal was 20 books. I got 22, so I'm very proud of myself. We have some big piles. I also read quite a few like big books this year, so this is literally one of the piles out of two. We have two piles to go through. If you are wanting to know more about the favourites of this year, I have already done that video where I went into a bit more depth because I am going to have to be so like quick fire with these. So if you want to know more about my favourite ones, I'll leave the link to the video above. But we're going to go through all of them. I'm going to try and be as quick as I possibly can. I'm going to go through the ratings for them and why I rated them that way. I will give a brief synopsis, but I'm going to link all of them down below on Waterstones and bookshop.org, which is a site that donates its profits or a percentage of its profits to small booksellers. So I will leave a link to them, so if you want to know like a more comprehensive synopsis, I'd go click on those links because we only have so much time. We're going to go through it in chronological order. I am going to have to use my phone to help me to remember what I rated them, and I've also posted a few of the reviews on my Instagram and I'm going to look at them because I don't remember the majority of them. So let's get going. First book of the year was A Court of Wings and Ruin. I read this over the new year, so I read the first two ACOTAR books last like in 2021. Finished the series off in 2022. This is my only 5-star read of the year. I mentioned it in the other video, but I rated it more 5 stars for the series because I really like this series. It really, I don't know, like it helped me get into fantasy. I found it a very easy read, a very compelling read. The smut in it's very good, and yeah, I know there are problems with Sarah J. Maas and like glamorizing abusive relationships, so definitely keep that in the forefront of your mind and don't read, I maybe wouldn't suggest this for YA, I'd maybe suggest this as more of like an NA book or just an adult fantasy book. It definitely shouldn't be YA. That's another one of the problems, it shouldn't be in the YA section. But if you're going to read it, looking at Sarah J. Maas and why the stuff that she does is problematic, but I really like this series. I really like this series. The next book that I read was A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is the novella set after this one and kind of sets up the next series. I rated this 4.75. I love stuff like this. If there's a series that I enjoy, I want to know the... Oh, it's ripped. Oh, I think I've just ripped it.
Oh no, when?
Oh, on the back.
When it fell?
Yeah. Oh no. I had this pile as one big pile and it fell and I think I've ripped the book. Oh, that's so sad. Anyway, I really like just hearing about like the, I don't know, the mundane parts of that world, and that's what, not, this wasn't mundane, but it was more like there wasn't a lot of action in it. I love stuff like this. I know it's not for everyone, but I love stuff like this. So I really enjoyed the novella as well. The next ACOTAR book is in here, but that's not what I read next, so we will keep moving on. Okay, next one is going to be the most controversial of this video, I think. So this is A Song of Achilles. Very big TikTok book. It is a telling of Achilles and, oh, what's his name? Patroclus. I did not like this book. I rated it a 2.5, and that was me being generous. I found it so boring. I felt like nothing happened until the end. What I've said about this book is, I think that people want gay porn, and this is what people have gone for, instead of just watching or reading other gay porn. Like, I feel like that's why people like this book, just because they want like a gay love story. There's better out there. Like, you don't need to read this book. have gay porn in your life. So I didn't like it. I thought it was just really like, it dragged, and I really didn't like it. I have bought, what's it called? Circe to try. See if it is a Madeline Miller issue. Like, I don't like her writing. Obviously, this isn't like a me being like, this is a bad book. I wouldn't say that, I just didn't like it. So we'll see whether it's a Madeline Miller issue. But I did not rate this book. It shouldn't have been as popular as it was on TikTok. Next one is another TikTok book. I read a lot of TikTok books this year, and it's Daisy Jones and the Six. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is my favourite book ever. Again, there are issues with Taylor Jenkins Reid, especially for her. I think the thing I saw is that she said that there needs to be more Latinx women wrote, but then she isn't like helping Latinx women like write. So I think that's the main issues, but definitely look into it. But this is the Daisy Jones and the Six. I think there is Malibu Rising is in here, but I just love her writing. I love how different it is. I like how, so the ones that I've read are Seven Husbands, then it was this, then it was Malibu Rising. I like how they're all written differently, and how I like seeing that time, because they're all kind of like 70s, well it might even be 60s to 80s Hollywood. This didn't surpass Seven Husbands for me. I rated this 4.25. It is compelling. I'm excited for the series to see what that's like, and I just didn't think it lived up as well as Seven Husbands. It wasn't as compelling, it wasn't as hooking for me. I think I read this, oh god, I don't know. Definitely didn't read this as quick as the other Taylor Jenkins Reid ones I've read, but it is a good read. It's probably my least favourite one. Right, coming on to a non-TikTok Tock book. I think I've seen this mentioned on TikTok once. So this is Behind Closed Doors. I don't know what I'd describe it as. A thriller? A crime? No, I wouldn't call it a crime. I'd say it's a thriller, but it's just a really dark thriller. I don't know, it doesn't really have like a thriller does, if that makes sense. Like, it doesn't have ups and downs, it's just all like, it's all dark. So the basic synopsis is there's a married couple, it looks perfect, it isn't perfect, and it has things to do with her sister, and the husband isn't what he seems. But that's the basic synopsis. I rated this 4 stars. I actually like this more than I thought I was going to. It is compelling, it is like, you're rooting for the main character, and I think, if I remember rightly, there is a dual timeline in this. I think that's right. So there's a time where she first met the husband, and then there's the time that's happening more like now-ish. I very much liked the ending. I would recommend this. I think 4 stars is about right. It can feel a little bit, not boring at times, but just a little bit like complacent, but I would recommend. Next up is The Familiars by Stacey Halls. This book is beautiful. This is one of my outward facing books. Honestly, my shelves look ridiculous at the minute because like there's like 20 books taken from them, but this is normally here. It is a stunning book, and that is the main reason why I picked it up. It is absolutely beautiful, but it just wasn't exciting. I can't really tell you what happens in, let me read a little bit of the blurb. Nah, the blurb's too long. Basically, this woman has been married and she's pregnant. She's lost a lot of kids in the past, and then she gets the help from a young midwife who's trying to help her bring the baby healthily, and there's witch stuff going on at the time. It felt like something exciting was gonna happen, and then nothing did. Like, nothing exciting really happened. It felt like it had potential. I could think of like a storyline that I would have put in there that I think would have been more exciting, but then it just didn't. Like, there is a main theme throughout this with the fox, and the fox is there, and you keep like, it keeps implying that something's going to happen with the fox, and you can tell what's meant to happen with the fox, and then nothing happens with the fox. It's just, it wasn't great. It wasn't like terrible, but it wasn't an exciting book. I think I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, but I'd probably give it 2.5 maybe. I don't know. I I don't know if I'd recommend this. I just found it quite boring. Next up is Invisible Girl by Lisa Jewell. I like Lisa Jewell sometimes. There are very much, I think I've read 4 of hers now. I either love them or I hate them. Like, I think, is it Couple Next, no, The Family Upstairs? I can't find it. I think Family Upstairs is Lisa Jewell, and that's one of my favourite books. I absolutely loved it. Other stuff, it's alright. It's not great. They're predictable. This one, I gave it a 4-star. I'm going to revive that and say it's probably like a 3.5, 3.75. It's alright. It's not as exciting as the other ones. It's probably more of like, not miscommunication trope, but just like, I don't know how to describe it. The main premise is a girl goes missing, and it has like multiple storylines in it, from the girl's perspective, the therapists of that girl's family perspective, a neighbour's perspective. Like, it's very odd, like, perspectives plucked, but it just, I don't know how I felt about it. It was alright. I'd probably say it's a 3.5. It's not a gripping one. It's just a thriller. So I'll let you take that as whatever you want, because I don't know whether I'd recommend it. Okay, Verity is the next book by Colleen Hoover. Again, Colleen Hoover is a problematic author. I feel like Colleen Hoover is more problematic than the other ones that I've said. I think the other ones that I've said, they just need to learn a little bit. Colleen Hoover isn't great. I think the main problem that people have with her is she glorifies abusive relationships. A lot of people don't like her writing. I don't seem to have that issue. I quite like her writing. And her son has been accused of sexual assault, and she has done nothing about it, and is like covered up the stories, I'm pretty sure. I didn't know that when I read this. I've read another one this year as well. I only found this out like in the last 2 or 3 months. But I am going to review this. I am going to tell you my reviews of the 2 books, but just please keep that in mind before buying them, before reading them. In terms of the writing style, which I know a lot of people say that they really, really dislike, I actually really liked it. I rated this 4.5. I do really like the writing. I won't be reading any more of her books, but the ones that I have read, I liked. Verity's, I think, from the 2 that I've read, I like Verity because it's more thriller than romance. Romance isn't my thing, but I know some people would probably call this romance, or like kind of romance, but this was a thriller to me. I liked the edge of your seat kind of thing. The basic premise of this is that there is a writer who has gone into a coma, and her husband asks another writer, who's the main person of the story, to finish her books because she's in a coma. She goes and lives with them, and stuff happens. But I liked the very like creepy side of it. I went into this book though expecting the worst things I've ever read. People like reviewing this beforehand very much were like, this is so messed up, this is like disgusting, the stuff in it is like ugh, like oh my god, it's the best, it's the most gripping, messed up book that you'll ever read. I don't think anybody's read Gillian Flynn who was saying that. It is not the most messed up. Read Gillian Flynn. She writes the most messed up stuff. So it was a bit of a letdown, and not letdown, but I like thrillers like that where it's just like, oh my god, and there was only one moment that I had that in this book, but I really did enjoy it. I liked how it was a bit of the ending. I hate books that are kind of like open to interpretation in the ending. This has that, but I kind of like the way that they did it. But I'm not going to say I recommend it because of Colleen Hoover, but that's just what I thought of this book. Okay, if you've been subscribed, you're probably sick of me talking about this book. I've talked about it a lot. I think I've talked about it in like 4 different videos now. Like, I don't know which videos I've included it in, but I have talked about this book a lot. This is The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna. It's a very good book. I really, really like this book. The basic premise is, this is in my like top reads for this year, so I'm sorry if you're sick of me repeating this, but this is basically about, it's like a fantasy land, and there are people in that land who, basically it's a very patriarchal society, and girls are like bled when they hit a certain age, and if you bleed gold, you are basically like a demon, you're shunned, you're sent off, and it's about one of the girls who bleeds gold, and it is just, it's so good. It is so progressive in terms of it has so much representation in it, and I freaking love that. It has trigger warnings at the beginning. It is beautiful. It's such a stunning book. It is one of those books that I picked it up because it is absolutely stunning. I'm in love with how this book looks. I rated it a 4.5. The only reason that I rated it like a 4.5 rather than 5 is I actually found it a bit confusing to keep up with who characters were. Like, I think it expected you to remember names, and I struggled with it and being like, who's that again and what do they look like? That's the only reason I marked it down, but I would really recommend these. I think it's going to be a trilogy. It might be more than that, but the second book is in here as well, and there is definitely another one coming. Back to thriller in 3 Hours by Rosamund Lupton. This was recommended to me by someone in Waterstone, so they told me that I picked it up and said yeah. Basically, the whole book is documenting, obviously it's not real, but like documenting a school shooting in the UK and like going through different stories that are happening at the same time. It's a very good book. It's written really, really well. It brings up issues that are so important. I did really enjoy this book, and I would recommend it. I gave it a 4-star, and I'm very glad that I read it. This is the other Colleen Hoover book that I read. It ends with Us. Okay, so the premise, I don't know how to describe this without spoilers. Basically, a girl meets somebody and it's their romance stories. The thing is, I liked going into this, like, before I figured out that there was stuff wrong with the author, I liked going into this blind and not knowing what it was about, because I had no idea what it was about. If you've read it, you'll know what I mean, but I didn't know that was coming. So, the thing is, I don't want to tell yous because I like to go into a blind, but I wouldn't want anybody to start reading this because Colleen Hoover isn't very good. But I liked the writing style in this. I think if you go into this with the correct mindset of not glorifying anything that's in it, you should be okay. Again, it should be, like, it should not be YA, it should be in, like, not even NA, it should be, like, in adults who understand the themes that are in this book. But, again, don't read her. I rated it 4.25. Again, back to thriller. I use thrillers as, like, a palate cleanser between books, and it feels like it should be the other way around. But I like to switch back and forth. If I read a load of thrillers, I feel a bit like, oh my god, I need like something lighter. And if I read loads of like fantasy YA, I feel like I need a thriller to just, I don't know, cleanse my palate, I don't know. But I finally read The Hunting Party, which is like the main thriller that I've heard people recommend. That and The Couple Next Door, which I've already read. I was sorely disappointed by this. I found it, again, really boring. I think I rated it 3-star, but it's 3-star for a thriller. I don't think this is what it's hyped up to be. I guessed the ending, and it was just boring. The main premise is there's a big group of friends. They go up to the Scottish Highlands for New Year, I think, yeah, New Year, and drama happens. I didn't rate it. I think there are definitely better thrillers out there. Glad I've read it, but I don't know if I'd recommend. There are better thrillers. Next, second book of the Gilded ones. This is the Merciless Ones. I think I prefer the first one to the second one, but that was only because I really struggled with like the abstract, imaginative elements of this book. With my autism, I really, really, really struggle with imagination. Like, I basically don't have imagination, and I felt like that made this book a little bit difficult for me. Obviously, neurotypical people, you just won't have that problem, so read it. But I just found that it made it a little bit more difficult to understand some characters in this book. Characters is probably the right way to describe it. Some events, I found it difficult, but it's still really, really good. Great representation. Again, content warnings at the beginning. I enjoy this series, and I'm very much looking forward to the next one. Next, Malibu Rising, Taylor Jenkins Reid. Again, it's a very typical Taylor Jenkins Reid book. This one is following I think it's two time scales. It's like there's a rich and famous movie star, and half of the storyline is following his kids when they were younger, and then the other timeline is the kids when they're older and dealing with stuff that happened in their life from like growing up famous and things like that. I feel like Taylor Jenkins Reid is just like, it's an easy read. I very much feel like it's like a beach read where you can just get through it quickly. It's not like a rigorous storyline, but it's still something that keeps you like interested. I've rated this 4.25. Again, I think that's the same as what I rated Daisy Jones and the Six. I can't decide which I prefer. These two aren't as good as Seven Husbands, but they're still quite good. Easy read, nothing like groundbreaking. Like I found Seven Husbands groundbreaking. There's nothing like that in that, but still really good. I enjoyed them. Yeah. Back to a TikTok book, and we have the Priory of the Orange Tree. This is on the favourite books of this year, so again, I'm sorry if you're sick of me repeating it, but I love this book. It is 100% worth the hype. It is very daunting. That it doesn't need to be. It doesn't feel like it's a long book. It's justified in being this size. I actually rated this down because I felt like the climax of the book actually felt quite rushed. Like I wish it had been a little bit longer. So it isn't a 5-star. I've put 4.5. I think I would change that to 4.75 because I really enjoyed this. It was my first kind of like high fantasy daunting book. I hope you guys get what I mean by that. Like things like Lord of the Rings, like just ones that are like, well, right, it's going to be an undertaking, and it feels like it's more of a complicated read. Like I would say like ACOTAR is probably high fantasy, but it's a very, very easy read, whereas this, it wasn't an easy read, but it wasn't a hard read, if that makes sense. It's just you've got to concentrate a little bit more, but it still feels accessible. I knew who people were. The names were a little bit difficult, but if you're just like me, just skip over them. You know who they are, but just don't read them aloud in your head. I would recommend this book. I can't do a premise for this. It is, all I'm going to say is high fantasy. It's got queens, dragons, pirates, lesbians, gay people. What else is in there? Magic. Like everything is in there. Please don't be daunted by the size. It is a very good book, and it's one of my highest rated of this year. Again, a thriller, a palate cleanser, if you will. It's a very odd thing to describe as a palate cleanser, but it is. So this is In a Dark Dark Wood by Ruth Ware. I have read one of her other books, The Turn of the Key. I enjoyed that. I mainly picked this one up because it's Ruth Ware and I know it, but it's also set up here. It's set in Gilded, which is Northumberland, which is where I'm from. So I was like, amazing. The main premise is there's a woman invited to a hen party of someone that she knew at school. She hasn't talked to in like 10 years. She's like, why? She invited me to a hen party. I'll just go. She goes, drama. It's how it is with thrillers. It's just drama happens without spoilers. That's all I can say. Drama happens. It was alright. It wasn't a very like complicated plot. Like it wasn't like ooh and then ooh and then ooh. It was very much like a there you go, this is what happens. So it was alright. I rated 3 stars. Again, there are better thrillers. I would recommend Turn of the Key rather than this. It was just a bit too plain for me. It was alright. I don't know how I felt about the ending either. Back onto ACOTAR, I read A Court of Silver Flames. This I rated... So if you aren't familiar with ACOTAR, this is basically the next like series in the series. It's the same characters, but it's focusing on a different person in the series. I hope that makes sense. So, I can't really tell you the plot unless you've read ACOTAR. And if you've read ACOTAR, you've probably read this. So, I don't know what to do. I'm not going to tell you a plot. I read it. I gave it a 4-star. It wasn't as good as ACOTAR. I am not a fan of the main character of this. I'm not going to say it because if you haven't read ACOTAR in general, I actually feel like it's a little bit of a spoiler for what happens in the original trilogy series, whatever you want to call it, to know who is the main character in the next one. So I'm not a fan of the main character in this. It wasn't as good, but it got better at the end. I very much, like, the first half was a bit, and then I really did enjoy the second half. I then read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. This is the Hunger Games prequel. I have a very complicated relationship with this book. I don't really want to give a spoiler. It kind of is a spoiler, it's kind of not. The ending of this book is ridiculous. I was so angry. What was Jack sitting over there? What was I like? I was fuming when I read the end, wasn't I? This feels like, this shouldn't have ended this way. This should have been a trilogy in itself. So the main premise is we're finding out about President Snow. I thought this was very much going to be like, we find out how Snow becomes the president. We don't. It is what this is about, but it's not what this is about. It doesn't end with him being the president, which I was annoyed at. And also, the thing that happens at the end, I'm very annoyed about. I really enjoyed the book. I really enjoyed being back in, like, the Panem kind of world. I really loved being back in it. I really like Suzanne Collins' writing, but the ending just really, really annoyed me. Like, I'm so angry about how this ended. So I enjoyed it, but the ending really peed me off. I think I've rated it 3.75, and it's mainly below 4 because of the ending. So this next book is the only non-fiction book of this year. I have definitely, like, lost my love for non-fiction. I find it very hard to read, but this felt like a book I really needed to read. It's been on my shelf for a while, and it was one of those ones where I'm like, I need to read this book, so I'll just do it, I'll get through it. I think it only took me 2 weeks, which is really, really good for me for non-fiction. So it is written well. I think, like, non-fiction is written well, but it's not written in a way to keep you captivated. This book is written not in a way to keep you captivated, but it's written well so that you can be kept captivated. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of like short chapters, which made it much easier for me to read. So it's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Renee Edo Lodge. I didn't know anything about this book in terms of the contents, apart from obviously the virality of this book, because everybody has read this book or knows about this book. I just knew it was a book that everyone needed to read. I didn't know it was about, like, Great Britain. I thought it was just about America again, because I feel like what she says in the book is very, very valid, in that a lot of the media that we consume about the treatment of black people is from American perspective, and this isn't, and that was very, very nice. This is in my top reads of this year, and I'm just really glad that I read it. It was a brilliant book. I think everybody should read it. It made me really interested in reading more about black history in the UK specifically. So if anybody has any books that they recommend about that, especially about, like, Windrush and stuff, I'm really interested to read about that. So 100% would recommend. I think I rated it 4.25. Everyone should read this book. We are on to the last 3, and we have another thriller. So this is The End of Her by Sarah-Louise. I'm alright with Sarah-Louise. I thought The Couple Next Door was alright, and I thought this one was alright. I feel like they're meant to be, like, kind of books where you read them and you're like, oh my god, but they never hit with me. I don't know what it is, they just don't land like that with me. I read it and I'm like, alright, okay. I thought this was alright. It was alright for just a thriller book, but it was nothing like groundbreaking, blow you out of the water kind of thing. It had, I don't know, it had a good few twists in it. I think the main reason I rate thrillers low is when I guessed them, and I guessed a lot of the stuff that was going to happen in this. So I rated this 3.5, and again, if you're after just, like, an alright decent thriller, yeah, I recommend it, but if you're after something that's, like, groundbreaking, like, kind of thing, pick something else. We are ending on 2 TikTok books. And the last one, one of them is Iron Widow by Xiranjie Zhao. I very much love this book. It is on my best reads of this year. I didn't think I was going to like this one. If you guys saw me, like, reveal this book in my haul, you'll know I didn't think I was going to like it. I am not a fan of books with aliens. I'm not a fan of, like, outer space kind of books. It didn't feel like that at all. Don't let aliens throw you off if you're like me. it doesn't feel like aliens, it feels more like monsters. And I just really, really liked it. There is a really good storyline in it that I absolutely love. I'm not going to do any spoilers, but I absolutely love the relationship storyline in this. I love the protagonist. Isn't the protagonist the main one, or is that the villain?
Antagonist is the bad guy.
So is the protagonist the main person?
Pro, Andy. So Pro is good, Andy's bad.
Just say yes or no.
Ask a question.
Is the protagonist the main story person, the main character? I really liked the main character of this book. I thought she was brilliant. I think, I said it in the other video, but I think she doesn't mellow, which I really, really like. There is a lot of books where the main character is female and they start off very angry and then end up very like, oh, and that doesn't happen in this book. She stays angry and I fucking love it. I just really like this book. The only reason I didn't rate it 5-star was that felt like there was no descriptors in this. I have no idea what any of these people look like. And again, imagination was a struggle for me. So that's the thing, when I rated this 4.5, please don't think that I mean that everybody should rate this 4.5. I just rated it 4.5 because the imagination was really, really difficult. The main things in them, I think it's Huaxins. Where is it? Oh no, the chrysalises. Huaxia is where that's what the place is called. The chrysalises are very hard to imagine when you don't have imagination. So that's the only reason I didn't rate it 5-star, but it is very good and I really would recommend. Right, we ended off with a funny one because this is the last book I read of this year. Again, very big TikTok book, A Touch of Darkness. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling. This book is awful. I don't understand how this has ended up so big on TikTok. I don't get it. It's not right. When I say it's awful, it's not awful, but the writing is not good. It is not good. I went into this, my siblings read this, and they said that the first one was alright, the second and third one are terrible. This is terrible. Like, it wasn't bad enough to DNF, I wanted to know what happened, but I read this, not read this mainly, but one of the main reasons I read this is because I wanted to read the smut in it, and I read it and there wasn't any smut in it and I was like, this is so bad. I was like, the smut must be really good. It is not. It is not a good book. The writing, I feel like this reads like someone's wrote it in high school or middle school. It's not a good book. The storyline is okay. It's alright, but it's not good. I think I rated this 2 stars. It's worse than Song of Achilles. Song of Achilles was just boring and a little bit hard to read. This is just terrible writing. It was easy to read because it's like written like a high schooler, but it's just so bad. I'm not reading the other ones. I can't. I'm alright for it. It felt very much like 50 Shades of Grey with some Greek stuff thrown in it. It was not a good. I'm not happy that I finished the year on this. I did start reading another book before the year ended, but I haven't finished it yet, so that's why it's not in here. But I just can't believe that that's how I ended my year. It wasn't very good. And that is all of them. I am very, very proud of how much I read this year. There are the one thing I want to say as well, there are main consistent themes as well throughout the books that I've read that haven't been great, that only some of them have been good at, and one of the main things is representation. It's just, I understand that, I don't think I've read any old books, but I understand that representation hasn't really came to a forefront of authors' minds until like the last 10, 20 years, and that's being nice about it, but it's just, some of them are just so bad. Like, there are characters in there that you don't get told their skin colour until you're 3/4 of the way through. They'll just assume that you know that they're white, and it's like, what? And I understand, I don't know if that's a debate, because I was talking to my friend Ellen about this, and she was saying that she likes that because then she can decide for herself and she can insert herself into their own books. But I just think as representation, we need characters of colour, and so many of them, they'd introduce the main character and you'd be like, is this a white character? Is this a black character? Is this an Asian character? I think the main theme, apart from, I'd say, Iron Widow, Gilded Ones, maybe Akatar to an extent, there is some representation in there, but Some of them are very like ambiguous. Are there any more? They're the only ones that stick out in my head, apart from maybe Taylor Jenkins Reid, but I'm not sure on that. Don't quote her on that. She might be bad with representation. I'd definitely say Iron Widow and Gilded Ones are the best out of there though, and it's really, really sad that I've read 22 books this year and there's only 3 in there that have really good representation. So if anyone has any good recommendations for books that have good representation, or good in terms of not saying problematic rubbish in there as well, it'd be very much appreciated. If you guys have any of like your favourites of the year, please comment below. I'd love to hear some book recommendations. I'm one of those people that I never know what to buy, so I just pick up the ones that I see that I like the look of, as you can probably tell. So please give me recommendations. I hope you found this useful. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave the video a like and comment with whatever. Tell me what you've read this year, your favourites, recommendations. And please make sure to subscribe if you are new. I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall hopefully see you in another video. Bye.